So our keynote speaker is an SME ecosystem development specialist and at present the executive chairperson of Business Financial Solutions, an entity which she started 16 years ago. She's young, please. In her capacity as MD of Business Financial Solutions and the BFS Fund, Kauna has been involved in the conceptualization and development of the Namibia Procurement Fund, the NAMPRO Fund, trade finance model, which has invested over 2 billion Namibian dollars, that's 110 million US dollars, in over 400 Namibian SMEs since inception. Rightly so. Currently, she's expanding the successful BFS business model into sub-Saharan Africa and is leading the establishment of BS operations in Mozambique. She has received several awards, including Best Women Finance Leader by the Global Awards, and as a committed corporate citizen, she has served on various boards, including Sanlam, NamPower, the Namibia Stock Exchange, and NAMDEB, as well as on non-profit organizations such as the Namibia Nature Fund and One Economy Foundation. Her efforts within the ecosystem remain focused on deepening the financial sector and uplifting not only Namibians, but all Africans. Can we please put our hands together for me, Kauna Ndilula?
As Nita said, the future is female, and we're living it. If I look at my journey 16 years ago, or 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we started playing in the financial sector, and I look at the presentation of gender then, there's definitely a difference. But I think what is even most encouraging is to see how both genders are playing together to find the right solution and propel the right players, irrespective of their gender. But recognizing, though, that the role of women has been understated and under-provided, and by pushing them and propelling the female entrepreneur is not necessarily at the expense of the male, of our male compatriots or our male boys, but in ensuring that we get a community that really is more sustainable, more resilient, more inclusive. Nita asked me to share my personal and professional journey. She also asked that as I do that, I should reflect a little bit on what BFS is doing, and I guess also the regional expansion that we're pursuing. So let me thank NABAN and the sponsors of NABAN that have made this possible. I also want to agree with the point she made that if we don't share, if we're too afraid to be vulnerable, we'll get nowhere. And fear is what holds us back. So let me start by sharing a little bit about my person. I grew up in an average poor house, but as a happy child. I've learned very early, or I was taught very early, especially by my mother, not to settle for what comes easy. I'm a trained social worker. Some of you know that, some of you don't. But I decided early in my journey that if I really want to make an impact, I need to look beyond the social sphere. Because the manifestation of the challenges I saw in our communities at points, and at times mostly, had an economic origin, but were manifesting socially. So I decided then to pursue a master's degree in economics, development economics specifically. I was lucky to be part of government at that point, so I went to study in the US, because in the early 90s, when government was being formed, there was a lot more development support to public servants to go and expand their knowledge and qualify themselves better to come and work. So I did 8 years of government service, for those who don't know. So during that time, I had the opportunity, I secured a scholarship and I went to Massachusetts. I couldn't do, because of work pressures and family, I couldn't do 2 years of a master's program. As most of you know, most MA programs in the US are master's program. I found a 1-year program. I was very lucky to find that. But in my second week at school, I realized I'm pregnant. So I was on a 9-month program, pregnant. And through God's grace, I came back home with the day we landed, my son turned 3 weeks, but I did make my master's degree successfully. It was not an easy journey. It was hard, but I've come to realize over life as a journey, a lot of what we do and don't do is in the mind. Orientation can position you for success or for perceived success, because even people who are successful or perceived to be successful have a lot of undercurrents and challenges that might not necessarily be in the on the phone. While my son was 6 years old, I decided to do my MBA with Stellenbosch. Why did I do that? I was in the financial sector then. And I realized to earn my place respectfully, I need to be able to competently present myself in the conversations I was having, and therefore I studied. I didn't need an MBA to do what I was doing. I believe I already had proven capabilities when I was hired to establish the SME business unit at BFS. But in the ecosystem that one operates, you need to make sure that you enable yourself and empower yourself continuously as you engage. So I've worked, as I mentioned, quite broadly in the private sector, in government, in the non-development, in the development community, which have given me a very good, I'll say, exposure base for whatever I do, because I believe that foundation is enabling me to, while I operate in the financial sector, still have a much more holistic approach to how I approach things. I'm a mother, and that's the most valuable school of life for me. I believe that it grounds me, it sets me up, it defines who I am. And when I look at things and I recognize the qualities of a mother, it is unique to humanity to have mothers. And in how I do business, I embrace the qualities of motherhood. I speak in the boardroom very feminine language, because I believe that we represent life. We carry life, we represent life. So sometimes when I talk about strategy, I say I'm pregnant with an idea. And you can see I use my hands a lot in a feminine manner. And I've come to realize when we decide to be who we are, people around us, our male compatriots, they become comfortable. We need to create a boardroom that is not limited. We need to create a boardroom that allows everybody to show up how they are. Because as much as we want race and color diversity, so do we also aspire to have gender diversity. Because in diversity is strength. So my entrepreneurship journey started in 2008, as Nita mentioned, propelled by the desire to see my co-citizens and my co-Africanists achieve economic self-actualization. And this is really something that I realized while I was practicing social work and doing a lot of community interventions. I realized that when men do not have the authority and the ability to decide how they put bread at their children's table, to be able to do that, that in itself is the most limiting and disadvantage that mankind can save. Everybody needs to be in a place where they are given an opportunity to enable to actualize themselves, be it at personal level or at enterprise level. And given my analysis that a lot of this is rooted in economical challenges, that's why I decided then to venture into supporting the SME sector. Initially, I considered myself a corporate entrepreneur. I said, look, my job is to come into an organization, look at inefficiencies, create business units, and all the jobs I held have been very much informed by what I do, how I should show up, the strategy of the entity. So I resolved then that my role is to do that, create efficiency in an organization, structure new interventions. But what actually helped me there and made me define myself as such was fear. And it's fear that that limits many of us to actually become what we potentially could become. So it's only in my late 30s, I think I was 38 when I decided to set up a business. And I decided to do that at the point when the business unit was deemed profitable, in fact, most profitable in the department that the SME business unit was, that I decided it's time for me to leave and to do something different. And What I left for was a model I've always conceptualized in my head, and I thought if SMEs could be served in this manner, it will be much better. But I thought somebody else should do that. I didn't place that burden on myself until I realized I'm actually limiting my own purpose by thinking somebody else should do that. And now that I'm 16 years later, having established BFS, and as I go through the presentation of what we do, I can only look back and be grateful for the focus that I had then, and the fact that I had enough guts to venture out while running a successful business unit to set up this BFS entity. So when I started, obviously, I decided to promote a business model that was untested. My target market is the SME sector, and every investor and financier will tell you that is the most high-risk sector to target market to focus on. A big question, was this model implemented before? No. Have you managed third-party funds before? Do you know how to handle investors' capital? No. Do you have a team that has actually worked with you in managing funds? And most of those answers were no. So in 2008, in the middle of the financial crisis, when I was actually going out there trying to raise money, what I was presenting was probably the most unfeasible and most unrealistic concept at that point, because people have lost money and they wanted to preserve. I think the orientation was preservation and being risk averse. And here I come, black, female, no experience managing money, targeting a high-risk model, untested model, and most people will look at me and shake their heads. Clearly, they thought I was a bit crazy. And it's not a bad thing when people think, as an entrepreneur, you're a little bit crazy, because you have to go against the odds. You have to believe in the possibilities against the obvious factors that you're facing to really move along. It's interesting how investors would always ask you how many funds you've managed before. And people in the investment field will tell you that's probably the most limiting question to people who are financial entrepreneurs and who needs to get into the investment space. Because people think that if you're an entrepreneur, you should be producing a product. You should be making something that is tangible. But when you are in the financial sector, what are you? A service provider? A service provider doing what? How did that investment or that model get created? So my start was hard. I had very little funding. I had some savings. I had no friends that could actually commit to that. And I came to appreciate how quick money runs out during that time. The investment period of starting a new business or expanding can be very hard and can be very demanding on the entrepreneur. And in the financial sector, that J curve is actually much deeper. But my strong commitment to the ecosystem development is definitely what drives my strategy to continue and establish BFS and now position itself for growth. Just referencing to what we do in BFS to give you a bit of context, BFS can have an advisory component as well as investment management component. The advisory business was founded in 2008 and the investment management 2 years later as managing mainly investment capital and deploying it to investment vehicle. Today, when we look at BFS, we can see a company that provides supports from ideation to commercialization. A company that provides mentorship program and provides business development plans, but also develop third-party intervention. It's a company that tries to influence policy to make sure that we're not just looking at very tangible or specific intervention, but also influence the development of a regulatory environment that supports the ecosystem and ensures that SMEs and startups can actually come to fruition, but also grow. And the reflection of the SME sector of any country shows the resilience or reflects the resilience of an economy. And that's why if you look at us in Namibia and you look at the dependency that we have on natural resources, we're highly affected by external shocks. But having a strong SME sector and a strong startup ecosystem enables an economy to be a lot more resilient and therefore protected against external shocks. On the investment management side, our vision is really to enable and bring to market multiple investment funds that caters for various diversity or various needs along the value chain of funding an SME. At the moment, we provide growth capital, blended finance, and bridge financing with the aspiration of launching a venture capital fund. I must say the dream for a venture capital fund is 16 years old, and we'll only get to see it, hopefully, this year still. And I'm mentioning this specifically to show that one's own trajectory or aspiration of how your business model plays out is not necessarily how it will. And therefore, in being an entrepreneur, you need to be able to reposition yourself based on market dynamics. In 2019, I decided to pursue my sub-Saharan African strategy. And the reason for that is really recognizing that the need for startups, the need for value chain funding across the spectrum of a business is not unique to Namibia. Many societies are actually more challenged than we are in Namibia. That doesn't mean that Namibia has the ecosystem it should have if we were all doing what we need to do. And Namibia has an opportunity to be a lot more creative and nurturing to the SME sector. So I started the journey in 2019, going as west as Senegal, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea-Conakry, a country that I think currently has a bit of political turmoil. But if you look at the natural resource and the potential that country has and how little the market is undeveloped, presents significant opportunity. I went a bit central and east towards Rwanda and Ethiopia. And in the Southern African hemisphere, there is not a country I have not assessed for the introduction of a BFS model. After all that investment, COVID came, put a damp on the strategy, but we remained committed and resilient. And in 2023, we were able to get an award, an allocation or approval from the Central Bank of Mozambique for the first investment company to set up an investment management company in Mozambique. Now, the market in Mozambique is very different. The regulatory environment is very different. But the beauty of it is that because the market is so undeveloped, there's a lot more need for funding and developing instruments. We've currently incorporated 2 companies. That's the investment management company, as well as the advisory firm in BFS. Subsequently, I've transitioned, as Nita have said, from being the founding MD to the chairperson of the company. What does it mean for me? There was mentioned earlier of generational businesses, how different needs, how entrepreneurs have different needs depending on where you are. I'm happy to be able to reflect that when I look at how the business is continuing, I can proudly say that it's definitely a business that is sustainable, that will exist beyond my time as MD at the company. What are the lessons learned? Because that's, I think, the nuggets that you are looking for after the introduction on what BFS is and a bit on my own personal journey. What I've learned over the period and what I need to probably emphasize is that no successful business have done it right from the beginning. You'll find that everybody that's in business can tell you they've lost money. I've lost money. I've made decisions where I needed to scale down after growing and having to let go of people, which is not easy for a business person. But when you look at the economic environment around you, you need to be responsive to make sure that you tune your business and size your business to being sustainable. I don't think there's ever a place that a business owner can reach where they say they don't make mistakes. You will learn from your mistakes, but you will make new mistakes. And hopefully we learn from those new mistakes as well. I believe in asking. I'm probably one woman that has received so many no's from men, to the extent that it really doesn't make a difference. And I've come to appreciate that when somebody say no to you, they actually can't take anything away from you. But the opportunity you have to receive a yes by just making that ask is worth it all the time. If I'm very bad with direction, but I'm never worried about being lost because I'm not shy to ask. When I'm lost, I think that's an opportunity to be explorative and I get to be more aware about my environment. And I think I apply the same when it comes to business. When I'm lost, let me ask questions, let me ask for help, let me see what learnings I get from there. There's always unforeseen circumstances. I think if we look at the economic downturn and the subsequent COVID pandemic that followed, Namibia was already on its knees, and many people felt they were really just flat down because of the consequent developments that happened in the economic sphere. So one has to be ready as an entrepreneur to be responsive. You need to reposition your strategy and see how you keep your business going by making sure that you make the necessary adjustments that you need to make. As a Black and as a female entrepreneur, it was not easy to be many times in the boardroom. And many a times I've forgotten I'm the only female or I'm the only Black in the boardroom. And I've come to appreciate it actually doesn't matter. If I was there to set up and run a business, I wasn't there to change the dynamics of color. But what I've realized is when you do what you need to do, the effect is that you actually achieve the diversity that you seek to achieve. It's hard to raise money as a female entrepreneur. We don't necessarily play golf, right? That's where a lot of the big deals are discussed. Not everybody drinks, so not everybody wants to sit very late at the bar. I saw there was a Namaongo festival in the north, and I curiously looked at the roles of women versus men at that festival. Then you get the funerals and the weddings and the sitting around the fire. Do you defy the culture and go sit with the men around the fire and risk to be seen inappropriate? It's hard because the deals are made when the people meet in a more relaxed manner. The opportunities in terms of where an angel investor might express interest to fund a deal is around those social investment where you casually have a conversation and somebody say, actually, that is interesting. I know somebody that have some free cash that might invest. On top of that, you have to balance that with being a mother, with being a woman. You have to do the hours. You have to be the beautiful looking woman for the men at home. And then you still have to take care of the kids. But I do believe that the DNA of a woman was made to multitask. So when I'm with my male colleagues and I try and tell them two things, I stop myself because I realize they can only listen and focus on one thing at a time. And I think that's really the complementarities, right? There's a lot of good that we have that we can deploy as women. In as much as we can say, society still doesn't give us our rightful place and we don't get the chance that we deserve. I mean, if you're a woman and you travel too much because you've got business dealings, then the family asks you, aren't you worried about what's going on at your home? You are neglecting your children. Must the nanny be cooking all the time for both your children and your husband? So I find it very interesting that when a woman is hardworking, extremely driven, it's seen by especially the family around her as a negative. And it creates conflicts in our minds and in our hearts. Because what is the real balance if I want to be successful? How much time do I spend at home? How much time do I spend with my children and my husband? There is no real recipe for that. I think what I would like to tell you as a woman that has been married, is a mother of many children, I've invested in making the time I spend with my family count. But I've also embraced the fact that as a woman, I will never survive as a housewife, and that I needed to make peace with that. I'm usually back at work when my children are 4 or 5 weeks. By the third week, I'm already edgy because I need the stimulation. It's okay. It's okay to be different to your sister. It's okay to be different to your sister-in-laws, even when your mother-in-law doesn't agree. So I'm almost concluding. I don't take myself too serious. I think both male and female, I think entrepreneurs, when somebody says they're business people, we believe we need to walk in a particular manner, we need to speak in a particular manner. Guys have to wear suits all the time. Guys, we have to just be. You know, first, we women, human beings, and there's nothing more important than our own health and sanity and how comfortable we are with ourselves as individuals. We are first a person before we are anything. And this whole thing of how you show up, and as Nita said, you know, you told this is, I'm a business person, I did this, I was successful, I've got a millionaire. That's really a lot of hogwash, and it puts pressure on people to say, even if I'm going through a different journey, if I'm a business person and I'm known as a business person, I need to show up like this. Please discard that, because it is important for your survival, for the survival of the business that you so preciously regard, that you are good with yourself. Because if you're not, your business will not be. So I laugh a lot at myself along the journey, and I take time to be. I take time to listen to my body. I know when I'm overstretched, and we all know that, but sometimes we ignore it. But you can feel it, you can sense it, and your body is telling you. So I do take time to be. For me, it's important to keep a moral compass. If you want to build a successful business, you have to do it ethically. You have to do it with the right moral standards. I can confidently go out and say to any investor I'm engaging, we have never been questioned about 1 penny in BFS, AFSs. Not in any fund that we manage, not in the company that I founded. Being accountable is important, and surrounding yourself with a team that holds you accountable is important. Diversity is important. So I love the surrounding myself or working with people who don't necessarily think like me, who don't necessarily look at life the way I do. And by doing that, I've come to learn a lot, and I think build a company that can stand the test of time and beyond my direct involvement. One has to be very deliberate if you want to be successful. You've got to have very specific targets, and I believe be fearless. It's not easy to be in business. And if it was easy, everybody would be. So if that vision and that creativity is with you and it's given to you, it's your duty to give it to life, give it life, and realize that. Successful entrepreneurs must continue relevance. Because if I think my business product or my product is good, I cannot be my client, right? The buyer of my product must think my product is good. They must think my product solves their problem. They must think my service is valuable to them. So it's not in the eye of the creator. It's also in the eyes of who you are selling your product to. So I think it's important for entrepreneurs to not get caught up in their own creativity and how good we think our products are, but in making sure that we remain relevant to the market we serve. I've also come to appreciate that entrepreneurs can be born, but are largely shaped. I didn't think I was an entrepreneur. Maybe I had some qualities that sets me right for starting a business, but I also believe that the environment have shaped who I've become. So Nita has asked me, what does it mean to be a female entrepreneur who defines the odds? So I'm saying, aren't I simply one that has remained committed to my vision against all odds? In the aspiration of creating and influencing the startup ecosystem. I'm committed to be part of creating a path for other entrepreneurs to follow. I don't think that sharing and opening up IP or sharing strategies takes away anything from others. It's about creating an economic environment that is functional and that actually enables entrepreneurs to succeed. Other than funding, what are the other meaningful support that I've appreciated across my journey? I think my most propelling support came from the founder of Windhoek, who recognized talent that I didn't know I had then. He invited me to join Windhoek after meeting me and said, come implement this SME model or thing that you think can work in the market. He gave me a stamp of confidence on qualities that I didn't know and gave me a la carte to establish the business unit at Windhoek 2003 to 2008 when I left. And for me, that's true leadership. Not everybody needs necessarily money to establish a business, but an expression of confidence that you actually have the quality and what it takes to start and run a business is something that any entrepreneur would need. I want to recognize also the role that GIPF has made in this market, in developing the financial sector, be it the stock exchange, capital in banks, the liquidity that is managed by asset managers, stockbrokers, and everybody. GIPF has a big catalytical role. And I do believe that they don't necessarily get enough credit for the role they play. Instead, we only want to remember the mistake that were made. And unfortunately, in small markets, that's what we suffer from. We remind ourselves and each other how inadequate or full of mistakes we are. And we do not recognize the values that are created. Sharing my vision and passion has been most rewarding and empowering with the BFS team. I believe that because I've shared and I've embraced with the people that have established BFS with me, I can comfortably move on and know that the vision is not my vision, it's our vision. And that's why as entrepreneurs, I want to encourage you to share your vision, to share your passion, to get buy-in from the people that are building with you so that it is an idea or a vision beyond yourself. So in my parting words, I want to just encourage you and say, do not be fearful to discover your greatness and your limitations. Therefore, do not go where the path may lead, but instead go where there is no path and leave a trail.